Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. It's such a pleasure to be back to this beautiful piazza, to your beautiful city of Modena, and particularly to see that the crazy project of austerity could not crush the Festival of Philosophy. So 3 cheers for Modena. And this will to continue, that which is vital, to not give up because someone's project says, your projects don't count anymore. That to me is the essence of seed freedom. Seed is not just a symbol, but it is the continuity of life itself. A seed is not a thing. It's not like this plastic cup. In the seed is millions of years of nature's evolution. Sunshine from we don't know when, which photosynthesized the ancestors of that seed. Or ancient soils that gave the fertility. And 10,000 years of our ancestors breeding diversity, quality, taste. My own country evolved 200,000 varieties of rice from one wild plant. That is brilliance. That is intelligence at work in nature and society, in a partnership of co-evolution and co-creation. But in a living seed which holds the millennia of memory and legacy of the planet as well as society and culture, is millions of years of potential to unfold into the future. It holds our future. Real seed, living seed, is free to the extent it can evolve. It can adapt. It can adapt to 2 degrees centigrade warmer climate and change itself to fit into that. Just as seed has evolved through different climates over the past, it can adapt across cultures. The tomato, which is today so much a culture of the Italian cuisine, didn't begin here, nor did the wheat. It's in that area called the Golden Crescent that is today disintegrating and in ruptures. Iraq, Syria, where wheat, barley, oats evolved in diversity. And it's the Southern Europe that maintained this diversity. I don't know how much Italy has lost, but Greece has lost 95% of its wheat varieties. And in seed freedom is our food freedom. As you in this wonderful region appreciate so much. I was just being told by the mayor that you have a 6-month exhibition on local food. And I was gifted a very beautiful little bottle of the balsamico. Only you can make it that way. And you wouldn't get the quality if the seeds didn't have the quality. Because there are 3 levels at which taste and quality and nutrition and nourishment comes in the food we eat, which is our seeds transformed. The first is from the seed itself. If your seeds have been bred for chemicals, they are nutritionally empty, tasteless, and full of toxics. And they're uniform. They've already lost quality at that level. If we don't farm ecologically, giving back to the earth with a gratitude and a thank you, the soil does not give us taste and quality and nutrition. New research is showing that organic food has 60% more nutrition than chemically farmed food, because all those nutrients that are produced by the seeds of millions of organisms are giving us the trace elements, the micronutrients that lead to the aromatic compounds that give us flavor, that give us taste, that give us quality. Till recently, we worked with the seed to enhance that quality. We bred for diversity. We bred for taste. We bred for resilience. Resilience both to changing climates, to pests, to diseases. And at a certain point, this legacy of the seed was ruptured. It was ruptured because instead of seed linking the past to the future in freedom, freedom in nature and freedom in culture, seed started to get adapted to the leftovers of chemicals from warfare. Synthetic fertilizers that were made in explosive factories, pesticides that evolved from the poison gases and the nerve gases, herbicides like Agent Orange that were used for the Vietnam War. And in order to push those chemicals, the seed had to be changed. First, it had to be changed to not evolve for its own freedom. It had to be made uniform so that you could apply the same kind of chemical to the entire farm. Diversity had to go, cooperation had to go, mixtures had to go, and the seeds' freedom had to go. But with it, the farmer's freedom had to go. With it, the cultural freedom to have the foods that diversity of seed gives have to go. But in my view, the ultimate rupture of the past connecting to the future as a legacy of the seed comes from a sad kind of greed. A greed that thinks that life rejuvenating itself in freedom is a block to profits. And therefore, seed whose very nature is to renew, reproduce, multiply, spread, must now be made non-renewable. Either non-renewable by biological means, and non-renewable seed is the way industry breeds seed. Hybrids is one example where the seed doesn't breed true. But there was an attempt to even genetically engineer seeds with terminator traits for sterility. So the seed that came from your crop in your field would be sterile. You couldn't sow it again to get another crop, And this way, you would be forced to buy the seed every year. This is a rupture. It's a rupture of a legacy. But linked to the same thinking that the free renewal of seed is an interference in profits is a very false idea that has literally shaped my life over the last 30 years. The false idea that instead of seeing seed as a continuum from the past to the future, evolving freely through adaptation and change, that seed is an invention that comes out of lab. Seed doesn't come out of labs. Seed is taken into labs. It doesn't grow in labs. It's taken from farmers' fields. It's taken into a lab. Then you have a gene gun, and the gene gun shoots a gene into the cell of the plant. And then they grow out the plant and sell it to farmers as if it was an invention. From the farmers, they collect royalties. Life is not a machine. Seeds are not machines. They are not a manufacture. They are life evolving in continuity. Even the seed that goes out of a GMO lab, the true nature of the plant still comes from the seed that was taken from the farmer. Only the gene for a Bt toxin or a herbicide resistance was introduced in a lab. That one toxic gene doesn't make the plant. It doesn't make the future. It poisons the future. It contaminates the future. Look at the closure of the future we have witnessed as the idea has been imposed that seed is not a common heritage, not a legacy, but a manufacture. The first is the very, very false idea of patenting, and patents are only granted for inventions. And therefore, 5 companies now control the amazing heritage of the world. Just look at a few examples. We used to eat 8,500 plants. They had all evolved from seeds of different species. We as human beings learned about these plants. As human beings, we adapted our cultures to the plants, and we adapted the plants to our cultures in a mutual reciprocity. Today, only 12 crops are grown to be globally traded, only 12. And only 4 crops are spreading. This is corn, canola, soya, and cotton. Now, you have wonderful corn. You have a dish called the polenta. But the corn growing in your fields today is not going to make polenta. It's going for animal feed and biofuel. Only 10% corn and soya that's grown in the world, and most of it is genetically modified, goes to human food. The rest goes to drive cars or to torture animals, because animals don't like grain. Animals like grass. That's why they are called herbivores. That's why cows got 4 stomachs to be able to digest the roughage that they want and they need. With seed freedom being taken away, food freedom gets taken away. The first level at which food freedom is taken away is by your not getting the diversity and quality of food that makes for your identity, that makes for your culture, that makes for the relishing of the taste, that makes for health. In the United States, which is the only country that has changed the seed so dramatically that 95% of their crops are corn and soya, most of it is genetically modified. Most foods now have GMO corn and soya. And every child is sick. Every child is sick. They have new diseases we never heard of before. Something called a leaky gut syndrome, where the gut develops holes and leaks. But the data that really shocked me was from the Center for Disease Control. And this data showed that about 20 years ago, 1 in 100,000 children in the United States was autistic. 5 years ago, it became 1 in 65. 2 years ago, it became 1 in 35. And on this growth of autism, 1 in 2 children in the US, on the diet on which they are living, will be autistic in the next 20 years. Can you imagine 50% of your children not being able to live freely, not being able to grow with their full mental and physical potential? This is robbing the future and robbing future generations of their full potential as human beings. Diversity of seeds, of crops, of food is vital to health. You in Italy and we in India evolved diversity as the basis of our diet. You have the famous Mediterranean diet. We have so many diets, we couldn't even start writing about them. But what is unique to both the Italian and Indian culture of eating is to recognize diversity makes for health. I have a wonderful colleague and friend who's Italian, but he lives in India now. He was a researcher and scientist at the Institute Icada in Aleppo in Syria as a plant breeder. And he comes and teaches at the school I have set up in Dehradun called the Earth University. And the reason I have to rush back is we have a course going on the A to Z of agroecology. And Salvatore Ceccarelli, wonderful gift of Italy to the world, was sharing how it's the reduction in the diversity of wheat seeds that has contributed to gluten allergies. Because chemical industrial agriculture requires uniformity. Chemical industrial breeding requires having more elasticity and gluten in your wheat, because in those giant factories, you've got to torture the wheat. In a small bakery, you can bake with love. And that's why your bread in Italy still has taste. The industrial bread has no taste, but industrial wheats are leading to gluten allergy because the uniformity is leading to the same molecules and the same genes bombarding our body and making our body react through allergies. Dr. Ceccarelli breeds mixtures in what he now calls evolutionary breeding, working with the law of the seed, whose nature is to evolve. True breeding means walking with the seed to evolve through diversity. The diversity of mixtures is getting rid of gluten allergies. This has happened in the US, it has happened in Iran. In India, we don't have gluten allergies because we still have diversity, and we have ancient wheats. which don't allow the gluten to be expressed. And this is the reason my very favorite company, Monsanto, took a patent on an Indian wheat variety, claiming to have invented its low gluten quality. This was one case we had to challenge, as we had to challenge the case of the patent on basmati, aromatic rice from India. So not only does the idea of redefining seed as an invention lead to denial of the freedom of the seed itself, it also leads to a piracy from the cultures that have evolved the seed, and the appropriators and pirates, I would call them, to claim to be inventors in today's world. It's this idea of redefining seed as invented and owned by a handful of corporations that, in my view, is the biggest illusion of our times, leading to the denial not just of life on earth to evolve in full freedom, but also to the denial of society to all its rights, the rights of farmers to save seeds, the rights of eaters to have quality food, the rights of the bees and butterflies to find pollen that doesn't kill them. As you know, 75% bees are gone in many industrial societies. And the main reason is the use of pesticides to coat the seed, because they've impoverished the soil so badly that now they have to coat the seed in a pesticide to ensure it doesn't get affected by disease. Healthy seed in healthy soil doesn't need pesticides. It has its immunity built into it. So the neonicotinoids are killing the bees, and the GMO crops are killing the butterflies and bees. The Bt toxin releases a poison in every cell of the plant all the time. So a GMO Bt seed kills the pollinators. We are doing a study right now in different parts of India. In the areas where GMO cotton is being grown, our researchers did not find even one pollinator, not one bee, not one butterfly. And when pollinators go, our food goes. 1/3 of the food we eat, every third spoon that we eat, is a gift of the pollinators. It's their pollination of the seed that contributes to the production. But there's a second reason in the United States where butterflies, like the monarch butterfly, are being killed, because the majority of GMO crops in the US are what are called herbicide tolerant. So you spray Roundup and it kills everything green except the plant, which is the patented plant. The idea is this will control weeds. Instead, it has killed the milkweed, which is where the monarch butterfly nests. 90% of the population of this amazing butterfly is gone. 90%. But not just that, the weeds that were supposed to be controlled are now superweeds. And Einstein had said a clear sign of insanity is to continue to do the same thing again and again, expecting a different outcome. Now, if your pesticides didn't control pests and your weedicide didn't control weeds, and instead they gave you superweeds, one would imagine intelligent people would say, not a smart way to progress. Instead, they are now genetically engineering seeds in the United States, and they have been approved by the government to be resistant to 2,4-D, which is an ingredient of Agent Orange. Now, seed freedom for me means respecting the seed and its diversity, respecting the rights of the farmers to save and exchange seed, respecting the rights of human beings to grow healthy crops from healthy seeds so they have health. Seeds were never designed to be carriers of war chemicals and poisons. And when they become carriers of poisons, they spread the poison. Our food becomes the biggest danger to health. Just yesterday I was reading, there's a new study showing that every year, because of food, because of a diet that is based on monocultures, uniformity, loaded with chemicals, more than 11 million people are dying every year. Food was supposed to nourish life, not to destroy life. And that's why denial of seed freedom is not just denying the seed its evolution, it's denying human society its evolution into a healthy future. It's through GMOs and the associated patterns on life forms that a new ontology is being created. The nature of being and existence is being redefined in such fundamental ways that life itself is threatened. And who is redefining this? A fiction called a corporation. A corporation is a legal entity whose existence we write into law by saying you can get together, you as individuals can come together and form a corporation. The first corporation was the East India Company, and the East India Company spread around the world. Today, there are 5 corporations trying to control the seed and its future. But in their hands, there is no future. Both because they have to narrow the base from 8,500 species to 4 crops. Within those 4, instead of the diversity of corn the Mexicans gave us, a few varieties of toxic GMOs. So not only is there one illusion that seed is an invention, there's another illusion that is being created, that corporations are persons. They are persons like you and me. A person I can touch, I can feel. A person I can hug. A corporation is not huggable because they don't exist. So people often tell me, don't you want a dialogue with Monsanto? I said, I don't want a dialogue only. I'd love to hug Monsanto if it existed as a person. But there are individuals in Monsanto. But Monsanto is a fiction. Now, they're trying to bring this fiction into the center of our society, of our culture, of our economy. One example of this is clauses in the new free trade agreements like TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, which is US and Europe. Now, in this so-called partnership, it's hardly a transatlantic trade and investment partnership. A true partnership would have US citizens sitting with you in this square and saying, what should be the future of our food? What should be the future of our seed? What should be the future of our democracy? That would be a partnership. This is a secretive dictatorship. Even the parliamentarians don't know the text that is being negotiated. The negotiations are done by the lobbyists of the companies. And Brussels has a bigger population of lobbyists than a local population. Their work is to write rules that will decide your future. So in the case of the WTO, Monsanto has admitted they wrote the rules of intellectual property and patenting. They even said, we were the patient, the diagnostician, and physician all in one. Why were they a patient? They said, we are a patient because farmers save seeds. Farmers have saved seed for 10,000 years. Farmers should continue to save seeds for the next 10,000 years if humanity is still alive. But Monsanto has a problem with farmers saving seeds because they want a monopoly on seed. They want to criminalize seed saving. And how were they the physician? They said now it should be illegal for farmers to save seeds. It's because of this I decided I was going to save seeds for the rest of my life and defend the freedom of the seed, the freedom of the farmers, the freedom of future generations. That's why I created Navdanya. But in the TTIP are clauses called investor-state dispute settlement systems. Now, no ordinary person would be able to understand what this vague phrase means. Investor means corporations. State means governments, including local governments, including national governments. Dispute settlement mechanisms means secret tribunals. And if a company decides that owning this beautiful heritage could make them big money, they can sue the mayor in a tribunal and say, you have deprived me of so much money by holding it as a common heritage. Monsanto anyway threatens governments all the time when they keep the heritage of seed alive. I worked a lot with my own government, with our parliament, to make sure that we did not in India recognize seed to be an invention. We recognize that seed makes itself, no one invents the seed. Seed is a self-organized complexity that organizes itself all the time. So our laws don't recognize seed as an invention or biological process as an invention. I was appointed to draft a law on plant varieties in which we have a clause which says farmers' rights to save, exchange, improve, breed, sell seed can never be alienated. We managed to counter the Monsanto laws, but they haven't given up yet. They've got President Obama putting pressure on us daily to change our laws. Like the TTIP. The TTIP would be a vehicle for corporations to sue governments that act in democratic responsibility for the common good, for the public good, and for the future. Now, if you think I'm stretching myself, look at what's happening within the United States, from where the idea of corporate personhood has come. It was first institutionalized through a Supreme Court ruling called Citizen United, where the Supreme Court ruled that corporations are persons and their ability to buy politicians and steal democracy is their freedom of speech. Their corrupting elections was defined as freedom of speech. And so you see the freedom of speech in US elections, which is totally driven by money. There is no people's voice. Right now, because citizens of the US have been forced to eat GMOs for 20 years and children are falling sick, They now want labeling. They want to say, I want to know if the food I eat has GMOs in it. 4 states tried. The money prevented it. But the state of Vermont passed a law for labeling of GMOs. A law we have in Europe, a law we have in India. 64 countries have mandatory labeling of GMOs. United States, which is supposed to be a democracy, doesn't give that democratic right to know what you're eating. Not only that, right now, Monsanto has used some congressmen to get a law passed through Congress. It's waiting to be passed in the Senate. But this law has been nicknamed by the citizens of the US as the Dark Act, the denial of the right to know to the Americans. Denial to Americans of the right to know. This act says no government can make a labeling law. It's an act to prevent Vermont from making a law. In addition, the corporations are suing Vermont and saying if people have a right to know, then the corporation's speech, free speech, is being taken away. I am helping Californians whose state government has passed a law that no county, no city can make its own laws. So democracy is supposed to be rooted in the local. You in Italy are very privileged that your communes, your cities are strong, which is why you can hold a beautiful festival like this. In the US, there's an attempt to take lawmaking upwards, and the laws are written by the corporations. I could give you detail after detail of how the freedom of the seed is being taken away. But the core of seed freedom is first the freedom of nature, the freedom of all her species, the freedom of biological diversity. Nature's freedom is built into seed freedom. People's freedom is built into seed freedom. Because beginning with this little living entity, all of society is being controlled, colonized, and enslaved. And this is why I have dedicated my life to seed freedom. And there are 3 things I do every day to defend seed freedom in India, but all around the world. The first is to save seeds as a commons, as a common legacy we must protect for the future. A legacy we cannot allow to disappear. That is our common duty. Another duty we have to ourselves and to the future and to the planet is the duty to eat diversity, to eat from living seed. Because when we eat diversity, we grow diversity in our fields. When we eat uniformity, we grow uniformity. When we eat poisons, we allow poisons. When we accept GMOs, GMOs will grow in our field. And that is why we call eaters co-producers, because with that consciousness of relating to the seed and the soil and the pollinators and the bees and the sunshine and the climate, with that consciousness, when we eat, every day we take action to protect the planet. Every day we take action to protect the future, create the future. Literally, through our eating, we sow the seeds of seed freedom for the future. And finally, because so much of the denial of seed freedom, of the enclosure of the future, is taking place through introduction of unjust laws, immoral laws, brutal laws. We have to remember the lessons that Gandhi taught us. So from the beginning, when I started to save seeds, another pledge I took with the farmers who work with us is the pledge for the seed satyagraha. Satya is truth. Agra is the force of truth. The seed satyagraha is like the salt satyagraha. When the British thought they could monopolize the salt and make it illegal for Indians to make their own salt, Gandhi walked to the beach, picked up the salt from the sea, and said, nature gives it for free. We need it for our survival. We will continue to make salt. We will not obey your laws. And taking inspiration from that, we do the seed satyagraha. Every time there's an attempt to make laws that deny seed freedom or block seed freedom. We did it when there was an attempt last year in Europe with the same lobbyists writing the laws. They wrote a law that would make it illegal to plant local seeds, open pollinated seeds. Brussels would give you permission of what you could plant. And of course, in a typical removing of the continuity, instead of talking about it as a seed law, they talked about it as a plant propagating material law. As if seed is material, raw material for production, not life embodied in its vibrance and diversity. So I worked with the European Parliament, I worked with European movements. We did a bit satyagraha in the Palazzo in Florence. And we said what Gandhi said, except that now it wasn't just about salt. It is now about the seed. That we have received these seeds from millions of years of nature's gifts, thousands of years of work of our ancestors. We owe it to future generations to maintain the continuity of the diversity, integrity, resilience of our seeds. Therefore, we will obey the law of the seed, which is life in continuity, and we will disobey any law that comes in the way of this heritage of life, this legacy to continue living.